Once, an engine attached to a train was afraid of a few drops of rain. It went into a tunnel and squeaked through his funnel and wouldn't come out again. This is the opening rhyme that solidified Henry the Green Engine's debut story as a memorable one. Based on the story of the same name from the 3 railway engines, the sad story of Henry is somewhat of a bottle episode that takes place entirely around this one tunnel, rather than occurring across several different sets like the previous 2 episodes. When the episode begins, it's a rainy day on the railway as Henry steams past. I'm not entirely sure how they achieved this effect of the rain falling. Was it just pouring water on this one piece of set, while the rain sound effects filled in the rest in our minds? Either way, this trickery sells the fact that it's raining, which is something Henry doesn't like at all. After going into a tunnel, Henry decides that he'd much rather stay in there dry out of the rain. This stirs up the question of just how much control these engines have by themselves without the drivers. Usually, they can only move about and stop when the crew is there, doing their thing. Here, Henry stops of his own accord though, against his driver's wishes. This may have been something the Reverend Audrey explained in one of his books, and I probably read it in the past, but I cannot remember any explanation for this. Sometimes, I really have to sit back and ask myself, why am I looking this deeply into a kids show about talking trains? I guess I'd rather just have consistency and established rules in this universe, because it makes it more immersive to me. I'm pretty sure this is something that happens a few times throughout the series as well, but it's not that big of a deal. Henry refuses to come out of the tunnel because he thinks it'll spoil his paint, which really begs the question of if he's ever actually really experienced paint before. I mean, if he's been out when it's pouring down, then why is he only now making a big fuss about it? Surely this must have happened before, right? Why now? Why this specific day? The real answer, of course, is because this story is about this time it happened, not any of the other times. This guy is vain as hell, and is willing to stay here and refuse to move because of it. If he wasn't being such an obstacle, then I'd almost respect his grit. He is dedicated to make sure that his paint goes unspoiled. Despite his crew's insistence that he gets out and moves, Henry stays where he is and blows steam at them. The passengers get out and stand around, waiting for something to do. This prompts the arrival of the Fat Controller, who is the head of all the railways on the island, to arrive and try sorting out the mess. Fun fact, in the US dub, they avoid using the Fat Controller nickname, and instead stick with his real name, Sir Topham Hatt. The Fat Controller declares that they'll pull Henry out of the tunnel, which earns him a wheesh of steam too. Everyone gathers round to try and pull Henry out of the tunnel, except the Fat Controller, who claims that his doctor has forbidden him to try and pull, but you could just tell he's making up excuses. They try pushing from behind after that, but just as with the first attempt, it's in vain. The Fat Controller doesn't help here either. Man, what a great example he sets for his engines, right? It's pointed out to Henry that the rain has stopped, but he doesn't care. It could start again at any minute, and he just can't have that at all. It's that the people can't move Henry. Thomas is brought in to try and move him. He tries his best, but he cannot make Henry budge whatsoever. I'd like to point out the excellent use of sound effects in this series here, which really helps sell it as a living, breathing, working railway. The various clanks and puffs and screeches and whirs really do a good job of immersing you in this industrial railway environment. On set, all of this would have just sounded like a little series of whirs and clicks. So, adding the effects in post really helps sell this. The magic of editing. When all else fails, the Fat Controller decides that if Henry wants to stay in the tunnel, then that's exactly what he can do, and bricks him up with just enough of a gap for the silly green engine to peek out sadly, watching the other engines freely going about their business. There's a bit of stop motion here as the wall is built, which is how the human characters are animated in the classic series. It's a common misconception that Thomas and Friends is a stop motion series, but that's not true, because it was filmed with real working mechanical models. There are stop motion elements throughout, as we see here, so if the topic ever comes up when you're at the pub or at bingo or something like that, then There you go, you have something to talk about. Why you'd want to sit in the pub talking about Thomas, though, is beyond me. The other engines go past, whistling and wheeshing at him, with Edward politely saying, "Peep, peep, hello," while Gordon gloats about it being Henry's own fault, and how it serves him right. The dirty, grimy makeup on his face really sells just how miserable and alone he is in here, having been left for who knows how long. It's a pretty instant transition in the episode, but given how grimy he is, and the fact the grass has grown in front of the bricks, you can tell that in-universe it was quite a while. Henry doesn't even have enough steam to answer, and all he can do is sadly watch. The episode ends with this ominous narration, stating that Henry wonders if he'll ever make it out. Then the viewer is asked directly if they agree that Henry deserves his punishment, which is quite a bleak note to end the episode on. It's accompanied by Henry's sad theme, which just makes the whole thing even more miserable. I can't quite remember how I felt watching this as a little kid, but yeah, it probably made me sad as well. The sad story of Henry is a bleak, unhappy episode that feels like a bit of mood whiplash from last time. There's no happy ending or triumphant moment for the character, or a satisfying resolution to events. This episode forms a two-parter with the next one, so this isn't really a complete story and it's hard to judge it on that. Henry was so vain that he intentionally sabotaged his work and earned punishment for it, and we see how this affects the Big Green Engine at the end, who clearly regrets his actions. This just goes to show that if you want to cause problems, you better be prepared to deal with the consequences. This story has unfortunately found itself as the subject for misinformed clickbait over the years, with articles and posts claiming this to be an incredibly dark episode, with Henry being bricked up in the tunnel forever. Anyone who knows the story would tell you that such claims are a load of nonsense, since the events of the next episode instantly disprove them. But that's another story. Thank you for watching. This is part 3 of a series of classic Thomas reviews I'm doing of the first 2 seasons. You can find parts 1 and 2 in the description, and also, I've been reviewing other things like Power Rangers. If that interests you, then please consider checking out my other videos and dropping a like and subscribe. It really helps. Thank you.